right, welcome back. Of course, the big topic of the day, do we have a deal or not a deal with Iran? Will they be signing something this weekend? Will they not? Well, a lot going on there. I am honored to have with us, some perfect timing, by the way, to have Ali Sabahi with us. He is a member of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, Iran's parliament in exile, a socialist, a sociologist, by training, and he is taught at the UCLA, California State University, Los Angeles, and the University of Michigan, and spent decades analyzing Iranian politics, terrorism, nuclear proliferation, and the development, all the developments there in the Middle East. So quite the honor to have him. Ali, good to see you. How are you today?
Well, good to be with you, Perry, and thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you. All right. Do we have a deal or not?
Well, obviously, we have to wait and see whether a memorandum of understanding, as it has been framed, will be signed by the Iranian regime or not. But obviously, we as the Iranian opposition, which has been fighting this regime for 45 years, and of course, 93 million Iranians hope and wish that this conflict will be resolved peacefully through negotiations, and that at the end of the day, the world's most dangerous regime does not acquire the world's most dangerous weapon, that is nuclear weapons. But if past is prologue, the experience of the past 4 decades, and particularly since 2002, when the NCRI first revealed Iran's nuclear weapons program, that these mullahs will not give up this program through negotiations, because for them, nuclear weapons program, their missile program, and of course their intervention in the affairs of their neighbors through proxy groups or funding terrorist groups is a life insurance policy. And so they recognize that if they give up their nuclear weapons, then they won't have any lever to deal with the rest of the international community. And because they are terrified of the domestic situation, case in point, 5 major uprisings since 2017, including the latest one in January of this year, that they need to project power abroad to in many ways cajole Western governments into appeasing them and provide them with concessions, economic concessions, political concessions at the expense of the Iranian people. So while, of course, there's every hope that a deal will be reached, it remains to be seen. I think the ball is in the regime's court, and we'll see how they react.
Okay. Let me unpack this a little. Let me come back. Can you explain to us what is the current structure? Who is in charge? The Revolutionary Guard, the Supreme Leader? Who's calling the shots?
Well, naturally, the regime, after the 40-day war that resulted in the elimination of the longtime Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and the top brass of the IRGC, has emerged much weaker and much more vulnerable. From the best that one can ascertain from this opaque regime, it seems to be that there's a council, so-called, the Supreme National Security Council, where some of the remaining commanders of the IRGC, including Ahmad Vahidi, who was for a long time the commander of the Quds Force, and as you may know, is wanted by the Interpol for his direct role in the bombing 1994 in Argentina, the AMIA bombing, which left hundreds of people, Jewish people, killed. He basically has emerged as the top IRGC official in charge. He's been assisted by a couple of others around him. And of course, they say that every decision they make through council and discussion goes back and gets the approval of Mojtaba Khamenei, who is Khamenei's son. But as to whether that is actually the case, it remains to be seen because there are conflicting reports now as to the health of Mujtaba. But be that as it may, really the regime infrastructure, the regime's composition hasn't really changed. The people are the same. Remember, these are hardcore IRGC commanders who grew out of the 8-year Iran-Iraq war, and they are all committed to the very, very basic principles that has held the regime together for the past 4 decades, i.e. Nuclear weapons program, missile program, export of terrorism and fundamentalism, and of course, brutal repression of the population. You may know that Iran now under this regime is the per capita leading executioner of its own citizens. Just this year in 2026, the last time I checked, more than 801 ordinary people have been executed, and almost 3 dozen dissidents, political prisoners, have been executed since mid-March, including 8 members of the main opposition, the Mujahideen Khalq, and 12 more are on death row. So when it comes to the guiding principles of the regime, nothing has changed and nothing will change until and unless this regime is toppled, which of course is the sole responsibility of the Iranian opposition and the Iranian people.
So am I hearing you say, Eli, that there will not be a deal this weekend?
I mean, I cannot speculate. Obviously, if they do agree to a first of all, remember, this is just a memorandum of understanding, which means that, at least based upon what I have read publicly, although there are reports that there is more to it that has been publicized, but this does not end the issue whatsoever. It just results in, if it is true, results in the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, that the blockade of the strait will be lifted, and then, of course, they will agree to engage in negotiations over the nuclear program. But as you may know, the devil is in the detail.
Right, right.
Recall that for 2 years, the Obama administration negotiated with the same people, and they said, yeah, we have a deal in 2015. So, and they gave them hundreds of billions of dollars in sanctions relief. And here we are in 2026, and it's all back to square one. The Iranian regime not only did not abandon its nuclear weapons program, it continued enrichment, it expanded its nuclear facilities, and now has 400 kilograms or 460 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium, which of course is a topic of negotiation and discussion as to whether it will be willing to give it up remains to be seen. And of course, as you may know, the administration has insisted, correctly of course,
right,
that the regime must have zero enrichment capability and that all of its nuclear sites have to be dismantled. But as to whether the mullahs will agree to that, the jury is still out. So we have to wait and see.
Okay, so this is a little bit of a hypothetical question, but if they sign something this weekend, given what you're telling us, this could be just another delay tactic with no intentions of following through, and which would result in further military action. But what I'm hearing you say is that if they sign, they don't mean it, and it'll fall apart.
Well, don't take my word for it. Look at the past experience. You know, back in 2002, the European Troika, Germany, France, and Britain, went to Tehran and met with the Iranian regime officials, including Hassan Rouhani, who later became president. And they negotiated and they negotiated. And this was repeated in Istanbul. They met in Geneva. They met in Vienna. But nothing happened. It was just kicking the can down the road. And so if they signed the memorandum of understanding, in my view, it's for them a sign that they are weak and they must give up something. So the mere signing of the memorandum of understanding from our point of view, the point of view of the Iranian resistance, is a positive step. As to what follows, naturally, nobody knows, because they must not, under any circumstances, be given sanctions relief, and there must be no return to the business as usual approach that the Europeans conducted when they were negotiating with the regime in Tehran. Now, if the mullahs are not serious about negotiations, I'm sure that the Trump administration will recognize that very quickly, and so as to what action they will take to deal with this procrastination of the regime, we'll have to wait and see. But at the end of the day, if you were to ask me what is the right course of action to take, is, look, negotiations with this regime have gotten nowhere. The 12-day war in 2025 and the 40-day war in 2026 proved that change will not come from the air and not through foreign intervention. You need the ground element, which is the Iranian people and the organized opposition, and the fusion of the network of the organized opposition with the Iranian people has the power and the capacity to bring down this regime. And that's precisely the message that 100,000 people will be conveying a week from tomorrow here in Paris, where I am, joined by more than 100 officials, distinguished former world leaders, ministers, a very stellar group of political people who will come to Paris, and they will deliver a message. They will offer a roadmap, a way out of the current crisis, that, look, if you want to deal with this issue, look to the only element, only factor that has the power to bring about real change, fundamental change, which is the Iranian people and the organized opposition.
Okay, so
that's what we feel the world, and for that matter, the United States should look to. And these negotiations will not resolve anything. Look, if the mullahs were interested in negotiating, first and foremost, they'd be negotiating with their own people. But how have they dealt with the Iranian people? 100,000 dissidents have been executed by this regime so far.
Right.
30,000 massacred in 1988 alone. And as we speak, people are being executed, in addition to thousands who were slaughtered during the January 2026 protests. So a regime which is unwilling to hear the just cries of its own citizens, you expect it to sit down and negotiate in good faith with its foreign interlocutors?
Wow.
At least they have proven that they're not in that kind of a business.
All right, let me take a quick break. So honored to have with us today Ali Sabavi. He's a member of the National Council of Resistance of Iran. And we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we got some more questions for him. Again, thank you for your time. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. Got a lot to talk about in a short amount of time. So honored to have with us, bringing him in all the way from Paris today. Ali Sabavi is with us. He's a member of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, Iran's parliament in exile. And he's taught at UCLA, University of California in Los Angeles, University of Michigan, spent decades analyzing Iran's politics and terrorism, nuclear proliferation and development there throughout the Middle East. Ali, do you think, given the fact that Iran's been knocked down pretty hard, their military's been knocked down hard, the regime, however, at least portions of the regime, very much still intact, do you think that the people of Iran have the fortitude to stand up again?
That's an excellent question. They certainly do. And if you look at the past 4 decades, the Iranian people have risen up at various occasions just let me mention a few more recent ones. Back in 1999, tens of thousands of Iranian students in the universities all over the country rose up. And of course, the regime responded with brute force. Ironically, one of the people who's the lead negotiator during the talks now, the Speaker of the Parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, who's an IRGC general, was at that time the commander of the State Security Force in Tehran. And he boasted that he personally sat on motorcycles, roamed the streets of Tehran, and beat up the students. Then you had the 2009 uprising. Again, people on the verge of toppling this regime. Tehran was shaking under the mullahs' feet. Unfortunately, as you remember, the Obama administration looked the other way, and they said this is a family affair and we're not going to get involved. And so the mullahs again took advantage of Western acquiescence and ignorance to suppress the Iranian people. Then you had the 2017 uprising, you had the 2019 uprising, then you had the 2022 uprising. Again, at that time in 2022, the Biden administration was in office, and what did they do? Basically nothing. And then you had the 2026 uprising. But what is different now than what we saw, let's say, in 1999 or in 2017 or even 2022, is that you have a robust, battle-tested, combat-ready, organized network of resistance units affiliated with the MEK who are active in 31 provinces of Iran, and the regime fears them very, very much because they target IRGC bases, they target bases of the paramilitary Basij, which of course acts as the shock troopers for the regime, and they also help organize and mobilize the protests. For example, during the 2026 uprising, they carried out 630 operations protecting the population from the IRGC. They engaged the IRGC, and they also inflicted casualties on the IRGC forces, to which the regime admitted. In fact, 5 days before the United States attacked Khamenei's compound in Tehran, on February 23rd, 250 members of the resistance units attacked the same compound and engaged the regime forces. 8,000 IRGC who were protecting that compound for several hours, and they lost about 100. Some were killed, some were arrested, but 150 retreated safely. And so there's a robust organized opposition within Iran itself. And so that force, combined with the millions of Iranians who reject this regime in its totality, provides a very potent, homegrown, indigenous force that can bring about change in Iran. What is required and is needed is for the international community to unequivocally side with the aspirations of the Iranian people, which is to overthrow the mullah's regime, and of course provide the necessary assistance. For example, overcome the internet blockade that we have seen in Iran ever since the war broke out in February, so that these networks can communicate together, so that news from inside Iran can come out. Also, I think there has to be more attention paid to what is happening inside Iran by the Western media. You hardly hear anything about the protests, about the executions inside Iran.
Right.
And so
Right.
I think the international community has a role to play, and that role, if they do play it, will be encouraging and empowering the people of Iran in toppling the mullahs.
So currently, how equipped is the resistance? Do they have the armament to do this, or do they need more?
No, certainly, I think, as they say, the more the merrier. Naturally, you know, when you have an entrenched IRGC that has a military force, that has all sorts of weaponry, that even deploys foreign mercenaries like from Iraq, from other countries, from Lebanon into Iran to keep the society in check, naturally the resistance has to be well organized, well equipped, but naturally there's no shortage of weaponry to be found. What, of course, as I said, is required is an acknowledgement, an open and public acknowledgement that yes, we support this movement, just like you saw the international community support the African National Congress, just like you saw the Reagan administration supporting the Solidarity movement. That is the kind of expression of support that is needed. Naturally, we do not, under any circumstances, advocate boots on the ground by foreign powers, nor are we seeking any financial assistance. What is required is political support. And I must also add that as we speak, there is a government in waiting. A provisional government has been announced based upon the 10-point plan of the NCRI President-elect Mrs. Rajabi, which is committed to freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, a non-nuclear Iran, the abolition of the death penalty, the gender equality, autonomy for Iranian ethnic minorities, and of course, peaceful coexistence with the rest of Iran's neighbors. So everything is in place. What remains is for the international community to finally, after 45 years of trying to engage this regime, to say enough is enough. We are now fully backing the Iranian people in their quest to get their freedom.
One last quick question. We have a blockade there at the Straits of Hormuz. Opening the strait, would that benefit the regime or the resistance?
Well, to be honest, I believe that this regime must not be allowed to have any resources whatsoever. Because the financial windfall that they obtain does not benefit the Iranian people, does not improve their lives. Remember that under Ahmadinejad, that lunatic president, Iran had $800 billion worth of oil revenues. Where did that go? It went to Syria, it went to Lebanon, it went to the Houthis in Yemen and other proxy groups that the regime had. It was spent on the nuclear weapons program, which, by the way, has cost the Iranian people close to $2 trillion. So clearly, every effort must be made to deny the regime the resources with which it suppresses the Iranian people. And again, I want to emphasize the importance of the rally on June 20th here in Paris by 100,000 Iranians from both sides of the Atlantic and their international supporters, and the message that they will carry for all governments around the world.
When will that be?
June 20th, a week from tomorrow.
June 20th, a week from tomorrow. Well, thank you. You're fascinating. Thank you for your time. I know it's late in the evening there. Thank you for your time. I look forward to talking to you often. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, you can certainly check out his work there, the National Council of Resistance of Iran. There's a picture of that landing page, and check out more of what's going on. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. Let's stay connected.
Thank you very much, Perry. Really appreciative of the time you gave me.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.